I wasn't looking for a roommate. Not really. The lease had both our names on it, sure, but when Leo said he was going to move in a little late, I didn't expect that to mean 3 months late. I figured he'd bail. Most people did. So for a while, it was just me, a half-furnished apartment, and a growing pile of unopened mail with his name on it. I only knew Leo through a friend of a friend, someone I barely trusted enough to borrow a hoodie from, let alone vouch for someone moving into my space. But rent in this city was a nightmare, and I was desperate. So when I got home from work one night and found a tall, tired-looking guy standing at the front door with 2 suitcases and a plastic tub of cleaning supplies, my first thought was, shit. It's happening. You must be Evan, he said, like we hadn't already exchanged 10 texts and a few memes over the past month. His voice was calm, deep, and he was dressed in the kind of lazy, layered way that either meant he had great style or didn't care about style at all. Leo, I said, shaking his hand. He had a solid grip. Warm palms. No smile, but not unfriendly either. Sorry I'm late. I had some stuff to sort out, he said, glancing away like the hallway walls were suddenly more interesting. No worries. I lied. You're here now. He didn't say much as I showed him around the apartment. The kitchen with 1 working burner. The shower that made a high-pitched scream when the hot water kicked in. The bedroom that was supposed to be his, but still had 3 of my boxes stacked in the corner. I can take the smaller one, he offered. No, it's yours, I said. Just ignore the boxes. I'll move them tonight, he nodded. Cool. That was it. No long conversations, no roommate agreements, no awkward getting-to-know-you icebreakers. Just bags down, door closed, day over. By the next morning, he'd already made coffee. I woke up to the smell, wandered into the kitchen in my sweats, and there he was, standing barefoot on the cracked tile floor. Pouring 2 mugs like this was something we did every day. You want sugar? He asked. Yeah, thanks. He handed me the mug without another word. I tried to make small talk, asked where he was working, freelance design, where he lived before, a studio with no windows, if he liked dogs, yes, but not the slobbery kind. He answered everything politely, but never asked anything back. After about 10 minutes of trying, I gave up and sipped my coffee in silence. He didn't seem to mind. The weird thing was, it wasn't uncomfortable. In fact, that morning ended up setting the tone for the next few weeks. Quiet mornings, soft music playing from his phone, the occasional shared takeout dinner when neither of us wanted to cook. We were more like 2 ghosts haunting the same space than roommates, drifting in and out, never really crossing paths, but never clashing either. Until the night the power went out. It was around 11 p.m., and I was halfway through brushing my teeth when the lights cut off. Everything went dark. Silent. I stuck my head out of the bathroom just as Leo opened his door. Did you? I started. Power's out, he said, like I hadn't noticed. He grabbed his phone, used the flashlight to find a couple candles from the kitchen drawer, and lit them like he'd done it 100 times before. The glow threw warm shadows across the walls, made the place feel less like a cheap rental and more like something softer. He set 1 candle on the coffee table and dropped onto the couch. I hesitated, then joined him. You ever notice how quiet it gets when there's no power? He said. Yeah. Kinda nice. We sat there for a few minutes, the candle flickering between us. I could see the shape of his jaw, the way the shadows caught in the hollow of his collarbone, where his shirt dipped low. His hair was messier than usual, pushed back like he'd just run his hands through it. Want a drink? He asked, already reaching for the half-warm beer on the table. Sure, we drank in silence. Again, not awkward, just there. Then, out of nowhere, he said, You ever think about how weird it is, living with someone you barely know? I looked at him. Weird good or weird bad? He shrugged. Just weird. I don't know. I've lived with people who were loud, messy, always in your business. You're not like that. Thanks. He smiled. Barely. It's a compliment. That was the first time I realized how quiet his smile was, like it wasn't for show. We stayed like that until the candle started to burn low. Then he stood, stretched, and said, "Night, man." "Night." He paused in the hallway. "Hey, Evan." "Yeah?" He scratched the back of his neck like he wasn't sure why he'd stopped. Then, "Thanks for not asking too many questions." And then he was gone. That night, I lay awake for a long time. Not because of the dark, but because I couldn't stop thinking about how close we'd sat on that couch, how his voice sounded in candlelight, and how lonely he must have been to thank someone for letting him keep his secrets. After that night, something shifted, not in a dramatic way. No big confrontation, no accidental touching in the dark, but there was a subtle change in how we moved around each other. Like we were both aware of some line we hadn't crossed, but were now quietly towing. Leo still kept to himself, still played low-volume music while he worked, still made the best coffee I'd had in years without ever bragging about it. But now he paused when he passed me in the hall, held eye contact a little longer, asked if I wanted anything when he made food, even if it was just reheated soup or scrambled eggs with sriracha. I started looking forward to those moments, way more than I wanted to admit. One Friday night, I came home late, long shift, full inbox, brain fried, and found him in the kitchen, sleeves rolled up, making something that smelled amazing. He looked over his shoulder. "Hungry?" I dropped my bag by the door. "Starving." He slid a plate toward me across the counter. Pasta with roasted cherry tomatoes, garlic, and some kind of creamy sauce I didn't recognize. "You cook?" I asked, surprised. He shrugged. "It relaxes me." We ate side by side at the counter in silence. It was one of those perfect silences. Not awkward, not loaded, just quiet company. His shoulder brushed mine once, accidentally, and I didn't move away. When we finished, I helped him rinse the dishes. Our fingers touched briefly under the running water, and he flinched. Not in fear, just like he wasn't used to it. Neither was I. Later that night, I couldn't sleep. I found myself pacing around my room, restless. At some point, I gave up and wandered to the living room to scroll through my phone until I passed out. Leo was already there, lying on the couch in sweatpants, a hoodie pulled over his head, earbuds in. When he noticed me, he pulled one out. "Can't sleep?" he asked. "Not even close." He shifted to sit up, made space. "Want the couch?" I shook my head. "Nah, just couldn't stand my room." He nodded like he understood that on a level deeper than words. We sat there, shoulder to shoulder, both staring at the TV screen showing nothing but the Netflix idle menu. I don't remember who spoke next, or what we said. I just remember the moment. At some point, I leaned back and rested my head on the top of the couch. He did the same. Our arms were just barely touching. "Can I ask you something?" I said, not sure why I waited until the middle of the night to say it. He didn't look over. "Sure. Why were you really late moving in?" He didn't answer right away. Then, "I was staying with someone. Thought it was going to be more than it was." It wasn't. "Boyfriend?" His breath caught just slightly. "Yeah," I nodded slowly. "Sorry." "Don't be." It was overdue. I glanced at him, trying to read his face in the dim light. He looked tired. Not from lack of sleep, but from holding things in for too long. "Was it bad?" I asked. He didn't say yes, didn't say no, just quiet, like being alone with someone. I didn't know what to say to that, so I said the only thing that felt honest. "You're not alone now." That made him glance at me, really look. Something flickered in his expression. Gratitude, maybe? Or something softer, harder to name. Then he did something unexpected. He leaned his head sideways until it gently rested against my shoulder. Just like that. No warning. I froze for a second. Not because I didn't like it, but because I did. Way more than I should have. He didn't say anything. Just let his weight rest there. I didn't move, I didn't breathe. I just let it happen. And that's how we fell asleep. Right there on the couch. His head on my shoulder. My arm tucked behind his back, not quite touching. When I woke up, the sun was starting to rise. Leo was still there, still asleep. His face was relaxed, the kind of peaceful you don't fake. His breath was slow, steady. And our hands, somehow during the night, had ended up resting side by side, fingers barely grazing. I didn't pull away. I couldn't. Because for the first time in a long, long time, I didn't want the moment to end. After that night on the couch, I started noticing him more. Not in the way I'd noticed other guys before. Not the guys I crushed on in college, or the ones I matched with on dating apps and forgot a week later. This was different. Slower. Like watching something bloom without realizing you'd planted it. Leo didn't talk about that night. He didn't need to. And neither did I. But the way we moved around each other changed. He didn't flinch anymore when our arms brushed in the kitchen. He didn't retreat to his room after dinner. Sometimes he'd linger by the doorway while I worked on my laptop, sipping tea like he was waiting for an invitation. I started giving him one without words, just scooting over on the couch or tapping the spot beside me. He always took it. We never sat far apart. One night, maybe a week after the couch thing, I came home to find him on the floor of the living room, surrounded by notebooks and pens, sketching something. "Design stuff?" I asked, dropping my bag. He looked up. Sort of. Doodling more than anything. He didn't offer to show me, but I walked over anyway. Sat cross-legged across from him and peeked at the page. It was a series of hands. Intertwined, fingertips brushing, one hand resting gently against another. "Hands?" I asked, smiling. He didn't look embarrassed, just shrugged. I like how they say things without words. That line stuck with me. Later that night, we were watching some bad horror movie on the couch, half paying attention, half just existing next to each other. At one point, a jump scare made him flinch, and his knee hit mine. He didn't move it. I looked down. His hand was resting on his thigh, open, relaxed. I didn't think. I just did it. I reached over and let my fingers rest in the space between his. Not holding. Not gripping. Just there. He didn't look at me. But his thumb moved. Slow, barely grazing mine. The rest of the movie passed in a blur. I don't remember the ending. Don't remember the killer's twist, or the fake blood, or the terrible dialogue. I just remember his hand. Warm. Gentle. There. When the credits rolled, neither of us moved. Eventually, he let out a breath. "I don't really do this," he said softly. "Hold hands?" I teased, keeping it light. He smiled without looking. "No, I mean, whatever this is." "Neither do I admitted. Another silence. This one thicker. "I keep waiting for you to pull away," he said after a while. I turned to him. "I'm not going to." His eyes finally met mine, and for the first time, I saw all of it. The hesitation, the fear, the hope. He looked like someone on the edge of a cliff, unsure if jumping meant falling or flying. "You don't have to figure it out all at once," I said. That's when he did it. He leaned in. Not all the way. Just enough that I could feel the heat of him, smell the coffee on his breath, see the exact moment his gaze dropped to my mouth. I closed the distance. The kiss was soft. Careful. The kind of kiss you give someone when you're afraid of breaking something delicate. He tasted like tea and tension, like a question wrapped in skin. When we pulled back, he didn't say anything, just rested his forehead against mine. And we sat like that for a long time, breathing, touching, not speaking, because for once, neither of us needed to say anything. Everything had already changed. After that night, after the kiss, nothing got labeled, no big talks, no "what are we?" conversation. We didn't even mention it the next morning. But the space between us, it changed. There wasn't as much of it. He'd sit closer on the couch, let his shoulder rest against mine when we watched something. He'd linger longer when I said goodnight, like he wasn't sure if he was supposed to go back to his own room anymore. And then, one night, he didn't. It was late, a cold, rainy Tuesday. I'd had the kind of workday that makes you question your entire life. Leo had been home all afternoon, tinkering with his sketchbook and ignoring the stack of unopened mail piling up by the door. When I walked in, he was curled up on the couch in a hoodie, reading something on his phone. "You look dead," he said, not unkindly. "I am. Want tea?" "Only if it has whiskey in it." He stood, grabbed 2 mugs, and didn't ask any more questions. That night, after 2 mugs of too hot whiskey tea, we ended up in my room. It wasn't some heated thing. Not some passionate, dramatic, clothing tossed across the floor moment. It was quiet, like everything else between us. He followed me in while I folded laundry, sat on my bed, and watched me pair socks. When I finally turned around, he was lying on his side, head propped on his hand, like he belonged there. "You staying?" I asked. He nodded. "If that's okay." I didn't say anything, just turned off the light and climbed in next to him. We didn't kiss that night. We didn't even touch. But we fell asleep facing each other, barely a foot apart. And in the morning, I woke up to his hand on my chest. Not possessive, not sexual, just there, like he needed something solid to hold on to. He didn't move when I opened my eyes, just kept his hand there, eyes closed, breathing steady. I stayed still for as long as I could, memorizing the weight of him, the feel of that small, quiet claim. Later, over coffee, he didn't mention it. Neither did I. But that day, he texted me in the middle of my shift. "Leo, do you want me to cook tonight?" Me. "Yeah, I'll grab wine on the way back." That became the new normal. He started cooking a few times a week, left his sketchbooks on the coffee table like he lived there, and I started waking up to the sound of his toothbrush in the bathroom almost every morning. We still hadn't defined anything. But we didn't need to, because every time he looked at me across the kitchen, or slid into bed beside me without asking, or reached for my hand under a blanket during a movie, we both knew we were already something, even if we hadn't said it out loud. By the 3rd week, Leo's stuff had unofficially migrated into my room. It started with a phone charger, then a book. Then his hoodie was draped over the back of my desk chair. His toothbrush never left the bathroom counter anymore. And his sketchbook? It lived on my nightstand, stacked neatly beside my alarm clock like it had always belonged there. He still had his own room, but he didn't sleep in it. Not anymore. Every night, after brushing our teeth in tandem, one of us would walk into my room like it was the most natural thing in the world, and the other would follow without comment. No discussion, no questions, it just happened. That part, being near him, waking up beside him, it got easier. What didn't get easier was everything I wasn't saying, because sometimes, in the quiet dark, I'd feel his arm draped over my waist and think about how badly I wanted to turn around and tell him I liked him, really liked him, that the way he sat cross-legged on the couch with a pencil between his teeth made my chest hurt in the stupidest way, that when he hummed while washing dishes, it got stuck in my head for hours. But I didn't say any of that. Instead, I waited, hoped he'd say something first. Then, one Thursday night, everything cracked open. We were lying in bed, both half asleep. I was on my side, facing the wall. He was behind me, his usual spot, pressed close enough that I could feel every breath against the back of my neck. His hand slid across my stomach, slow, hesitant. I didn't stop him. He tucked his fingers just under the hem of my shirt, barely touching, just resting there. Then he said, so quiet I barely heard it, "I think I was waiting for something like this." I didn't move. My heart pounded. "Like what?" I asked. "This," he said. "You. This bed. Waking up without feeling like I have to leave." I swallowed. "You don't ever have to leave." His hand tightened slightly. "I know. That's the weird part." We didn't talk more after that. He pressed his face into the back of my shoulder, and we fell asleep that way. Skin to skin. Breath to breath. But in the morning, something was different. He made breakfast, eggs, toast, those weird veggie sausage patties he liked, and didn't retreat to his sketch pad. He sat across from me at the table, legs brushing mine under the table, his eyes locked on me like he was trying to decide something. "I got an email last night," he said. "Okay? A studio job. Small team. Freelance, but it's solid. They want me in New York. I blinked. New York? He nodded. It's just a few months. But they want me to start next week. I tried to keep my voice steady. So you're going? I don't know, he said, honest. I was gonna say yes before I met you. I looked at my coffee. It was cold. He leaned forward, elbows on the table. I don't want to screw this up. I met his eyes. You're not screwing anything up. I am if I leave. I shook my head slowly. You're allowed to go after things. That doesn't mean this, us, has to end. His face softened. So this is an us? I hesitated. Feels like it, doesn't it? He didn't answer with words. He stood, walked around the table, and kissed me. It wasn't a goodbye kiss. It wasn't soft or hesitant. It was something else. Something like a promise. After Leo told me about New York, we didn't talk about it again for a few days. But we didn't ignore it either. It just hung in the air. Like background noise. Like the low hum of the refrigerator at night. Always there. Always present. But easy to pretend you didn't hear if you didn't listen too hard. In those days, everything we did had a weird weight to it. He still cooked. I still brought home wine. We still curled up on the couch and fell asleep in my bed, limbs tangled like it was the only way we knew how to exist. But now I noticed everything. The way he looked at me a second longer when I made him laugh. How his hand lingered a little lower on my back when he passed behind me in the kitchen. The way he studied my face sometimes, like he was afraid he'd forget it. And every time I caught him doing it, I wanted to say something. To tell him not to go. That maybe we didn't know what we were yet, but I wanted more time to figure it out. But I didn't say that, because I was afraid of what he'd say back. One night, I found him sitting on the floor of his room for the first time in weeks. The lights were off, just the soft blue of the street lamp bleeding through the blinds. He was surrounded by clothes and open boxes, packing. He didn't look up when I stepped in. I wasn't hiding, he said, voice low. Just needed to see what I'm actually taking. I nodded, even though he wasn't looking. You need help? I asked. He shook his head. Not with this. I didn't leave. I sat on the edge of the bed and watched him fold a shirt like it was something sacred. His fingers were careful, deliberate. You could stay, I said suddenly, the words slipping out before I could stop them. He froze, then turned, slowly. Don't say that, he said. Why not? Because if you ask me to stay, I will. That cracked something in me. You would? I asked, barely above a whisper. In a heartbeat, he said. But I can't afford to wonder what I gave up every time something goes wrong. I need to know I went. I nodded, swallowed the knot in my throat. Right. He stood and walked over to me, knelt in front of where I sat on the bed. I want to come back, he said. If you'll still want me when I do. I looked down at him, his hands on my knees, his eyes locked on mine, nothing hidden. I want you now, I said. He leaned forward and kissed me. It wasn't slow this time. It was the kind of kiss you give someone when you know time is running out, when you don't know how many nights you have left, when you're trying to memorize the way they taste, the way they move, the way they sound, when your breath hitches against theirs. We didn't undress each other quickly. There was no rush. We were quiet, intentional. His hands moved slowly. Mine did too. Like we were trying to speak in touch because words felt too fragile. When we finally lay together, skin to skin, chest to chest, I felt him exhale against my neck, like he'd been holding that breath for weeks. I'm scared, he said, barely audible. Of what? That this is the best thing I've had in a long time, and that I'm leaving it. I tightened my arm around his back. I'm scared too, I admitted, but I want you to go. He pulled back, just enough to look at me. Not because I want you gone, I said quickly, but because you deserve to know. And I think I deserve to know too. If this is just us, now, or us for real. He didn't speak. He just kissed me again, slower this time, almost reverent, and we fell asleep wrapped up in something that felt too big for either of us to name yet. But I think we both knew. It was love, even if we hadn't said it. The morning Leo left, the apartment felt too still. He woke up before me. I only realized because when I opened my eyes, his side of the bed was already cold. I found him in the kitchen, dressed and packed, a cup of coffee in each hand. "You weren't going to wake me?" I asked, trying to smile, trying not to look at the 2 duffel bags by the door. He handed me the mug. "Didn't want to say goodbye while you were half asleep?" We stood there in the soft gray light bleeding through the windows, neither of us talking. The silence between us was different than all the others. Heavier, but not sharp, just full. "I don't know how to do this," he said eventually, his voice low. "This part." "You don't have to do it perfectly," I said. "Just don't disappear." He nodded slowly. "I won't." "I mean it, Leo. Don't go silent on me. Don't vanish just because we're not waking up in the same place." He looked at me like he wanted to promise me everything, but all he said was, "I won't." When the rideshare pulled up, we stood in the doorway longer than necessary. He hugged me the way people do, when they're not sure how long the space between bodies will last. Like his whole body remembered every night we'd spent tangled together and wasn't ready to let go yet. "You'll still be here?" he asked. "Yeah," I said. "I'll still be here." He kissed me. Not like the first kiss, not like the last one, just like something real. And then he was gone. The door clicked shut, and the apartment immediately felt too quiet. I stood there for a long time, holding my coffee, staring at the space where he'd been. And I didn't cry. Not yet. But when I walked back into my room, I noticed it. His sketchbook, still sitting on the nightstand. Inside, tucked between pages of hands and rooftops and scribbled notes, was a new drawing. 2 figures lying on a couch, shoulder to shoulder, eyes closed. My heart stopped. On the opposite page, just 1 sentence, "I'll find my way back." He texted me from the airport. "Leo, I hate airport coffee." Me, "You forgot your sketchbook." Leo, "No, I didn't." He called me that night. We talked for 3 hours. He told me about the studio, the city, the noise and the lights, and how the cab driver almost hit a guy on a bike. I told him about the quiet at home, the weird ache of not hearing the shower run at 9 a.m., the fact that I'd opened the fridge and instinctively reached for a second mug before realizing he wasn't there. We didn't say anything heavy, but when we hung up, he said, "Sleep well." And I said, "You too." And then he said, "I miss you already." 3 weeks passed. We talked almost every day. Not long calls. Not dramatic ones. Just enough to feel like he wasn't gone. That he was still mine, even if the bed was colder now. Then one day, I got home and found a small package at the door. Inside was a blank sketchbook. And a note. "Your turn." I didn't cry. Not really. But I stared at that note a long time. And I started drawing. Not because I was good at it, but because maybe this was how you hold on to someone without holding them. Leo came back 3 months later, just for a week. "Work break," he said. But when I opened the door and saw him there, hoodie, backpack slung over one shoulder, same tired smile, I knew it wasn't just for work. He didn't say anything. He just stepped forward, grabbed my shirt, and kissed me like no time had passed. And when we pulled apart, he said, "I don't want to do distance anymore." I laughed, overwhelmed. "What does that mean?" "It means I'm coming back," I told the studio. "They're cool with remote work. I don't want to live out of a suitcase anymore. I want this." He looked around the apartment like it was something sacred. And then he looked at me. "I want you." And that night, when we crawled into our bed, it wasn't with uncertainty or hesitation. It was home, finally.